Hello, welcome back to Hydroponics Daily. Today I will be talking about a plant that many of you will not have heard of, but is one of the most important plants in the world, and that is Arabidopsis, or to give its full name, Arabidopsis thaliana. It's also known as stalecress. It is normally, you will have seen it grows all around the world, and it's a weed, and you'll find it growing on paths and in gardens and things like this. So why is it one of the most important plants in the world? Well, Arabidopsis is the model plant species. There are a number of plant species that are termed model plant species, like tomato and wheat and things like this, but sunflower, let's think of some of the ones, Lolium perenne, things like this, that's a grass. But Arabidopsis is the one, and it's the one that all pure plant science is conducted on. Most of the experiments are done on Arabidopsis. So if they're looking at the genes that control development, it's done on Arabidopsis. If you're looking at genetic engineering and gene expression, it's all Arabidopsis. And why did plant science choose Arabidopsis? If it is not a crop species, it's of no actual monetary value, why choose that species? Well, there's a number of different reasons. I believe it has a modest genetic sort of volume. The number of chromosomes, the number of genes is not massive, and it's not a polyploid like in wheat and things like that, where it's got numerous and multiple copies. But the crucial thing is that it's got a very fast life cycle, so you can get it to seed very quickly, which means you can pull out traits really quickly, and you can phenotype it very quickly. So you might mutate it, and then you can look for mutations and things like that. So so you can buy Arabidopsis seeds if you're a scientist, or you can just get them donated from a fellow scientist and then propagate them. And then they have all sorts of seed banks where they have the mutations in all the different genes. So you can get Arabidopsis with a gene for rooting turned off, or gene for this or that. So you can grow them, and then you can see how they respond to different treatments. So it's a really useful sort of data bank of all these, or just seed bank of all these different genetics. So the wild type Arabidopsis, and then compare it to a mutant and see how it's affected by growing under certain light conditions or all this. So very useful. Arabidopsis is in the brassica family, and or as we call it, the cabbage family. So it's related to both ornamentals and vegetable species. To name but a few: cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, watercress, turnips, radish, horseradish, cress, honesty. So honesty has got the worst scientific name. I'm going to do one on good and bad scientific names as I see them. Honesty has got a bad scientific name, and I'll talk about that in a future episode. Stocks, that's a brassica. Wallflowers, candy tuft. So Arabidopsis, knowing more about Arabidopsis will help the growth of those species as well. So, and then also weeds. If you could kill an Arabidopsis, you can control weeds that are related to it. So shepherd's purse and bittercress, they're weeds that are in the brassica family. However, shepherd's purse, I think, is grown as a crop in China. So a weed and a crop. Other plants like that, they're both a weed and a crop. I think fat hen is a big old robust weed in arable crops and also on allotments and in gardens. But I think it was brought over by the Romans to the UK, and it was like a bit like quinoa, or quinoa as I like to call it, and it was a non-cereal grain. So that's interesting. So I think it's related to buckwheat. As I say, Arabidopsis is not the only model plant species used by scientists, because there's certain things that Arabidopsis doesn't do. Like it has a rosette of leaves, just like a cabbage plant. And so fruit and stem development, it's not great for that, because its fruits are tiny little green, tiny globules, really. So and it's an annual as well. So it's no good for studying genetics of wood production, for example. So there you would use something like populus is the model plant species for woody crops. Maize is a common model plant species. Lots of scientists use maize, tomato. A lot of scientists use moneymaker and Acer Craig, but they're very old varieties now, so probably not commercially relevant. Pea and tobacco used to be used a lot as a model plant species. It's a strange one, really, when you think about, health, things like that. But yeah, tobacco was, and it just grows so fast, and you could get a lot of genes expressed in the leaves. And it smells lovely as well in your greenhouse, tobacco. I mean, it doesn't smell like smoke. It does smell like, a lovely, in the evening, it gives off loads of volatiles. So if you wanted to study volatile production, chemicals in the air, then tobacco would be a great one for that. Yeah, just looking at my notes, Californian poplar, Populus tricarpa, that's a common one for woody plants. So Arabidopsis is grown in lots of controlled environment growth rooms in universities up and down the country, in the UK, and in all around the world. I think its distribution is pretty much global. So, and you can get, so the wild type one, there's specific types, and the Arabidopsis that grows in Norway will have a very different photoperiodic response to the one that grows in Gibraltar or Cyprus, the south of Europe. It will have, much more of a long day plant and much more day neutral down in Gibraltar. So it's not just one distinct genetic population. There is variety, but scientists tend to swap seeds and keep the strains that they use, the cultivars, the varieties. And then, as I say, they can access all the different mutants, and you can grow Arabidopsis hydroponically, aeroponically, and I'm not sure what the standard grow media is. A lot of people use perlite mixed with peat, although that's being phased out now. And yeah, so that is Arabidopsis. It's the model plant species. You'll see it now. Now you've heard of it from this podcast. If you read any scientific papers on Google Scholar, then you will see reference to Arabidopsis in lots and lots of studies on plant science. And you might not have known what that meant before, but it's this small little brassica weed that scientists use. I said it's quick life cycle. It's also very small, so you can fit about 50, probably like 100 plants in a square meter, or I thought easily, very easily. So as well as being fast turnaround, that's the model plant species. It's also got loads of trichomes on its leaves, so it's good for trichome studies, things like that. It's quite a juicy leaf as well, so you can get loads of, maybe you're looking for analyze chemistry of the plant. It's also good for that. You can juice it up. So that's been Hydroponics Daily for today. The completely useless but also completely valuable for scientists, Arabidopsis. If you thought this was useful to you, then please follow the podcast so you don't just get this episode, you get one every day on your podcast provider of choice. Thank you very much for listening, and see you again tomorrow.